All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the Turbo Makes Games YouTube channel. I'm Johnny, and I'm joined by my friend Tobias. Welcome in, Tobias. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, awesome. So yeah, we are going to be talking a little bit about the game that Tobias is working on called Just Read the Instructions. So yeah, that's kind of going to be the topic of today's video. Of course, this is built with Unity's data-oriented technology stack and the entity component system and all that goodness. So I think we're going to be talking about a lot of cool things. I want to talk about some things just kind of related to like the design of, developing games with large entity counts and like how you can kind of make that fun, and then kind of going into some more of the technical details about, actually, completing cool things, on the technical side with Unity ECS and all that. And I believe your game uses Unity's HDRP as well. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Cool.
HDRP.
Yeah, yeah. So I think there's definitely going to be some, a whole bunch of things that we can talk about related to that. So yeah, welcome in everybody. Excited to have you all here today. So I figure just at the beginning of this stream here, we can just give a quick little kind of introduction for people on what your game exactly is. You actually just released a brand new trailer today. So yeah, I guess we can go ahead and play that on stream here. So let me
Go
go
for it.
ahead and switch over to that here. Just read the instructions. I mean, come on. That is awesome. You did a great job with that trailer.
Thank you very much. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in that. Yeah.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just drop a link in the chat here to the trailer, as well as your Steam page here, so people can go ahead and wishlist this on Steam right now. Yeah, I think it's like a totally awesome looking game. We just got a little preview of the trailer, but why don't you go ahead and just kind of give us, the quick pitch about, what the game is and all that.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, just read the instructions. The game is like stands on two pillars. One of them is like we have this gigantic amount of crawlers that you get to that are trying to kill you most of the time, and you have super powerful weapons to try to handle them. Like you saw in some of the shots there, like one discharge with the shotgun can like obliterate like maybe 150 crawlers in one shot. So that's very satisfying. So that's one, powerful weapons, huge amounts of crawlers. And then you have the instruction part. So the game actually pivoted a little bit recently, but it's about you are sent in as a strike team to take out the corrupted AI that has taken over the simulation it lives in. And your task is just to read instructions from people who are outside the simulation and who are trying to help you to understand the AI. And then as you do the instruction, they will come up with more and more elaborate ways to like give it to make you do very illogical, very weird stuff inside of the simulation to confuse the AI. So like
Oh,
if anybody ever like heard about the magic tokens for ChatGPT, like you write some string into ChatGPT and ChatGPT like sort of almost breaks down
right,
and
right,
just
right.
like, yeah, that's the sort of concept here. And you are like the manifestation. You're like a physical, not physical, but you're going into the world and doing this with guns and with illogical actions.
That's great.
Um,
That's great.
yeah, so it's still weird instructions, still the focus of that, but now you have a purpose why you're following these instructions and trying to solve the
Nice.
issue
I
at
like
hand.
that. How it kind of like, yeah, makes sense within your game world and everything like that. Yeah. And I
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
like the, whole idea that you kind of have these like really vague and silly instructions that like, don't necessarily make sense, but you kind of need to like figure out, what they mean and how to complete them and everything.
Yeah, yeah. So like just to give an example, like you help John move in one that's one of the
Yeah.
things that
Yeah.
show up in the there. And the first time you help John move, you do it as supposed to, and then it's like now you need to throw all the moving boxes outside of the map instead. So now you need to find the edge of the map and just throw them, and they just glitch out and disappear. And then the world like sort of glitches and stuff changes, and like you realize, oh, this is not what the simulation and the AI had intended.
So
It's
there's like kind of some like elements of like breaking the fourth wall almost, where you're kind of
yes,
like, yeah,
yes,
breaking out of
exactly.
like the simulation that you're playing in.
Exactly.
That's so
So
cool.
so that's actually kind of a quite new pivot. I think it's a very good pivot. It allows me to do a lot of stuff with the game's narrative. But the trailer is it's not exactly super reflective of that new narrative, but it says a lot of stuff about you fighting an AI, so it's still in there. It's just that there's going to be a lot of more stuff, cool stuff that's going to be like just fascinating to jump into the world and see how much you can glitch it out.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And yeah, by the way, I should mention that we actually did a live stream previously on my YouTube channel a little while back. Actually, do you know when we did that?
I think it was like almost exactly 2 years
Yeah,
ago,
it was
right?
2 years ago tomorrow, exactly.
Oh well,
Yeah, how
that's
crazy is that?
is that fate or something? I
I
don't know.
know, I know.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
been I haven't completely focused everything on the game during those 2 years, but essentially it's been just work on the years. I am not to switch focus or anything. I've actually like I've consulted on the Raft game. Have you played Raft?
I have not played it, but I'm familiar with it. I'm sure many people who are in the
Yeah,
audience have
yeah.
because it's
I
such a
spent
popular game. Yeah.
a few months working out kinks for them on in their code base. So yeah. Anyway, most of the time since we talked, I've spent working on this game.
Great. Yeah, and I'm actually just gonna go ahead and drop a link to that previous stream in the chat if anyone wants to go ahead and check that out. I think that stream did a really good job about just kind of like introducing, what your game is at the time. You mentioned that some things had kind of changed, and we can kind of talk a little bit about that. But it also just kind of gives like a good overview into your history of development and kind of how you got started and everything like that. So I think it is a really great conversation that people might be interested in.
Yeah.
And by the way, you did say that you were working at Sunlock Studios for a while, and you had kind of mentioned that some of the developers there were some of the people who were really getting you into Unity's data-oriented technology stack. And of course, since that live stream went live, they've of course released their game V Rising, which is built using Unity's data-oriented technology stack and entity component system and all that.
Yeah, full circle.
Yeah, yeah,
That's what
yeah.
they were working on, and like we started at the same pace, and not pace. I mean, starting at the same time, almost like, but they are 30 people working on it. But they have completely all of their programmers, my old colleagues, all of them are like, dots is the future. Let's just keep at it and that. many of them have made a lot of stuff in Unity and outside of Unity, and they're like, this V-Rising is not possible to do without dots, not even close.
Yeah. No kidding. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, there's a lot of I know details about that game since I have my friends. So there's stuff I could talk about there as well. That's just interesting, specifically for dots. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Totally. Well, yeah, I mean, let's get into talking about some of the dot stuff a little bit. So I guess I just kind of want to start with like, I think last time we were talked, you were on version 0.17, is that right, of Unity ECS?
Yes,
Okay.
that seems correct. Yeah.
And then, so did you kind of go through different upgrade processes? Did you upgrade to 0.50 and 51? And are you up on 1.0 now? Like, how's that kind of all gone?
All right. So let's see if I can keep this gigantic story and twist and turn to a
Yeah,
short, interesting
for sure. Yeah.
thing. So I upgraded to, I think, 0.51 when that came out. I think I skipped 0.50, and a lot of the stuff that upgrade wasn't such a big deal. But that was the one with the partial classes, right? Something like that around there.
Yeah, kind of. I think it started introducing those things, and yeah.
Yeah. So yes, so I upgraded that, and uh, I remember that being like a week of upgrade at least, and that's not a long time to upgrade a full game. So that was pretty all right. Well, a week and then probably a month of random bugs I haven't found at
Right.
the moment, and then I was stuck on that, or not stuck, but Unity didn't release anything for quite a while, and I remember when they showed off 1.0 or the first versions of 1.0, and they showed there was like a very very early version of the ocean in HDRP that came with the Unity version that dots
Right. Yeah.
1.0 was meant for. And
Yeah.
I looked at that ocean and I was like, I want that in my game. And I'm like, God damn it, I gotta upgrade to 1.0 as well. That was actually like a big part of the reason why I upgraded to
Yeah,
1.0,
and there was a
because
little spot in your trailer where it was like a kind of underwater looking thing. Is that using the new HDRP water, or is that something else?
no, that's actually custom shaders by me.
Oh, cool.
That's actually completely custom. That I made that way before I had the ocean. The ocean actually, the end scene when the camera is like going towards like oversized old computer CRT
Yeah,
screen.
yeah.
That's on top of water. So in the game probably I could like maybe mostly do it with a little bit of just shader like the shader I have on the underwater scene with some planar reflection, and I would probably get away with a lot of it. But I want to be able to have the water doing exactly what the water want to do. It's very very good looking in HDRP, so I
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah.
have
No, I'm
access to it.
actually that isn't something that I noticed the first couple times that I watched this trailer here. I'm just kind of
Yeah,
having it up on the stream right now. You can definitely see you have like the water reflections, and yeah, that looks really good.
yeah, yeah. It's that's doable pretty easily with some distortion normals and planar reflector. But I wanted to do something with the water eventually, and like there's stuff in the works. And I'm not being like coy and like being secretive about it. It's just that I haven't really figured out exactly what to do with it
Yeah,
yet.
exactly how you want to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Makes sense.
that's one thing. There's no secrets around my game. So anything I don't answer. That's just because I haven't really thought about the answer, thought about an answer myself yet.
Fair.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
so you are on Dots 1.0 now, right?
so actually, I just started up Unity to look at it. I am on dot 1.0 pre-15 of all things.
Okay. So still
Um,
still a couple of versions back. I think that was
yeah.
before all the kind of transform changes, right?
No, I have. Well, there is the one version one inside if you use the pre-compile things to use it. But I use this is I am completely over to the new local transform and world transform. Or well, local transform. I hear that world transform is not longer a thing in the latest version,
Correct.
but I
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
have it. Yeah.
Okay.
I was really confused when they introduced World Transform. What's the point of this
Yeah,
one?
yeah, no, it definitely makes sense that they kind of simplified that.
Yeah. And I also got to mention, I don't know if you agree here, but I think it was kind of funny that I bet aspects in 1.0 came about a little bit because like transform, rotation, and scale was like just eating up all of the different parameters in the for each.
Yeah, yeah.
And now they just reduced that to local transform. So now like I haven't used aspects for anything in my game
Yeah, no,
yet.
they actually ended up removing the transform aspect, so that's not even really a thing
Yeah,
anymore.
but they still have aspects
Yeah,
generally,
yeah,
right?
you can still
Yeah,
create your own custom aspects. Yeah.
yeah. And I see probably a good idea to use that in some cases when you have very spread out systems or components. But yeah. Anyway, the big thing with upgrading to from 0.51 to 1.0 was my whole game was procedurally generated on in the loading screen, but the procedural generation was in game object world. So I converted
Right.
the
Yeah,
whole
yeah, yeah. I
thing
think you were
in
kind of
the loading
mentioning that
screen.
last time. Yeah.
Oh, did I? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, we probably talked about it some.
I listened to it recently just to kind of like jog my memory about like some of the things that we talked about.
Yeah. So actually, like this, like February this year or something, January, February, it took like 2 months for me to upgrade to 1.0 and make all the because I had to rewrite all the generator code from
Yeah, I'm
scratch.
sure. I'm sure.
Yeah, that was actually like kind of painful.
Wow.
but but it's like 10, well, before I had loading times of almost 30 seconds, so that was almost unacceptable, I
Mm.
thought. And now on my like 4-year-old Ryzen processor, mid Ryzen processor, it's like, I don't know, 4 or 5 seconds loading time.
Okay. Great. That's
So
awesome.
some of the stuff is just so much faster to do if you aren't using the game object instantiate. That one is a big no-no.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, I do see that we have some kind of questions and comments coming through in the chat, so maybe we can kind of get into some of these a little
Yeah,
bit. By the way, we got TJ in the chat says the glitch effects in the trailer looks gorgeous. How are you
thank
doing
you.
the glitch effects?
Which one?
Let's see if we can kind
I
of
think I
go
have
through,
like three
kind of
different.
scrub through the trailer. I think the this kind of part where do you have the stream up on your end so you can kind of
Yeah, I have it
okay.
on my right
I
here.
know this part's pretty cool here where you have like the city and like the buildings kind of materialize. I
Oh,
think
right,
that's kind
right.
of a
Yeah,
cool part right there.
actually, uh, that's a that's completely fake. Just to get it out of the way. So that's not how it looks. I would maybe I can do something like that in actuality when you load the screen, like properly see it like that. It's not out of the question. But the problem is, I don't know if you try this, but if you stack a lot of additive transparent meshes, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, if you stack a lot of additive transparent meshes or materials on top of each other, the frame rate just tanks like
Mm.
instantly. And that scene is a lot of additive boxes that just flicker around, but they are in some cases like 40 of them stacked on top of each other.
Oh wow.
Uh, and that together with some other post processing that now when I look at it, I don't think I needed to crank that high, but it took like 1 second per frame to render that.
Dang.
But for me it was like obviously you can optimize that to something different, but I knew that was for the trailer, so I just want this
Yeah,
video
yeah.
file done so I can like cut it into my trailer when I
And
need
and
it.
I do see some other glitch effects like when we have the help grandma cross the road. You can kind of see like in the back there's kind of some like colorful glitch things going on here, and then like even that like
Yeah,
little analyze the
yeah,
AI. You have like just little like kind of glitch effects pop up after you kind of like shoot.
yeah. And there you saw the house like turning on
Yeah,
sideways.
yeah.
That's one of the parts where you break down the levels.
So are those things all happening in real time now?
Yeah, that's all real time. That's still like additive materials, but a lot less. So it's fine, and it's very quickly over.
Gotcha.
Um, this, if you keep, it's weird with the delay here. If you go with the like pause at the mid spawn time of the final boss sequence. So you know when there's like red flickering inside of the computer at the very end.
Oh yeah. So we have like kind of this
Just
here.
continue for like, yeah, that one just there, that's flickering. That's just like, I literally just like took all the vertex point of everything that is inside the computer and just threw in random triangles to connect between everything. That's it. There's a fully modeled miniature, well, real sized like living room inside of the computer, so it's like the
Oh, I
computer
can kind of
lives
see
inside
there's
of
like
the
a
computer.
couch or something back here. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I asked both Midjourney and ChatGPT, like, where would an AI live inside of a 3D environment? And well, it didn't come up with this, but eventually I got to something like this. It's kind of strange to ask an AI, well, like, where do you live
Where do you
if you
live?
literally live inside of a video game?
That's
But,
hilarious.
yeah.
And then yeah, I see we have a couple people asking in chat about seems to be a multiplayer game. We know we talked about that it was co-op. So how are you doing the multiplayer? Are you using netcode for entities? Is it a custom solution, or are you using some other third-party library?
So just netcode for entities didn't exist when I started and was very half baked when I
Yeah.
committed. So as actually with V Rising, the same solution. It's my own rolled um, code generated version, similar to how netcode for entities does it, but a lot more niche for exactly my game. And I'm not sure, maybe you can enlighten me about this, but I believe netcode for entities is authoritative centralized server,
That's
right?
correct. Yeah.
Yeah. For
That's kind of
me,
how it is now. I think they want to get to the point where later on that they might have kind of like peer-to-peer options. But yeah, it is server authoritative right now.
yeah, and one of the foundational ideas and concepts, since coming from battle right and PvP and authoritative server and stuff like that, and all the costs associated with that, I was completely focused on making this game player hosted from like day one, and not even like, oh, it starts a server in the background. I like the server code is like completely just integrated into the gameplay code and everything, and it just happens on the fly. So the server, basically, the server just runs a few more code that does the basically the decision making for the enemies. That's the main difference. And also obviously it's the hub. You don't communicate directly with other clients as a client, so the clients communicate with the server, and then the server sends it to the other clients. So like but your movement is completely owned by you, so you don't have any slowness in any way from you. There's the game would be so easy to cheat in, it's almost ridiculous. But that doesn't matter.
So yeah, so you
It's
don't
like,
need to do any like client side prediction or
no,
any kind of
you
like
just like, if
simulated
you
rollback
walk.
and all that stuff.
Yes, exactly. So I do a lot of client smoothing by
Sure.
myself.
Yeah.
Uh,
For like things that are
but
synchronized across. Yeah.
yeah, well, mainly the player. I don't have a lot of stuff that actually needs to be very smooth.
Mm.
You can throw the weapons, and they maybe one day I should make a little effort to make them maybe interpolated. But right now they just fly away, and it's just positionally synchronized. But the players have some, history, positional and rotational history and stuff like that, so they can get behind and yeah, they can jitter a little bit with the timing on the network without it being very weird on the other clients. Uh,
Gotcha.
but you own your own character completely, and when you press W, you walk forward, and it's just irrelevant what anybody else thinks, and you just send that data to the other one, and like, this is where I am, take it or leave it.
Gotcha.
Uh,
So it's like a
yeah.
custom like UDP solution that you've created basically.
Yeah, I actually have two different implementation. One of them is in an old C# open source like transport layer called Leadgren. It's actually the one used for Battle Right also, and
Oh,
I
okay.
think de-rising also uses some of that in the background. I don't remember, maybe they've switched, but anyway, it's just like a transport layer, like helping packing bits together. But I can send it through that, which completely is my own server. I made the server architecture for that. And let me see here. But I also used Steam's own peer-to-peer thing, or I don't know, remember
Oh, okay.
their latest thing where you can like just communicate between Steam users.
Gotcha. So yeah, you're not
Yeah.
having to like expose people's IP addresses and all that
Well,
stuff. You're kind of
if you manually connect to somebody, or if you like host your own game with outside of Steam, you can host your own server and
oh,
like
okay.
show up in my server listing service.
Oh,
So I have
interesting.
a server which you can like just list your IP and how you connect to it, and it uses NAT punch through to like try to connect to each other,
Sure. Yeah.
and you need to have some ports open probably to do it. But that's basically because I don't want to lock anybody into having to use Steam. And also, you can just connect to somebody on the local network. You don't even need to be
Yeah.
connected to
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
internet.
Totally.
Yeah.
Good old LAN
So
party.
yeah, exactly. I really wanted that. I don't know why. I think it's just a waste of my time, really. But I'm like, that's
Yeah,
fun to have.
it's like might as well have it. You know, it's not that really difficult. What are kind of the like bandwidth costs of like especially if we're potentially synchronizing lots of enemies and player positions very quickly. What's kind of been the bandwidth costs that you've been testing with?
So two interesting things here. First of all, the game started around all the crawlers, right? So it
Mm-hmm.
started with how many crawlers can I simulate in a reasonable way in dots? This was like early 2019, so a very long time ago. And one of the things that I realized is like the networking is going to be the bottleneck here. So that's where I should focus. So the way it works, and I don't remember if I talked about this on the other stream we talked about, because that was working fully back then as well. So it works like this. The server like calculates a bunch of different crawlers and like, oh, this box of 10 by 10 by 10 meters of crawlers is like the most filled 10 cubic meters with crawlers in the whole world,
Okay.
and a lot of them haven't been synced for a while, and then it syncs just that blocks, and so then it can like just
Mm.
identify that block as an ID with just a few bits, and then send all of the crawlers with their individual position relative to the cube in that space, which just makes the positioning data for all the crawlers super slim. It's like a crawler is just, it's barely even like, I don't know, 80 bits.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and if you ever coded something from, you know that that's not a lot for an
Yeah. No. No.
enemy.
No. 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 Yeah.
That's and also the thing is that I don't need since they raycast on the ground and just stick their feet to whatever surface they find. This is completely irrelevant. Clients will have different opinions on where the feet will stand, but the core of the
Sure.
character will be at the same place.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that means that if you have like a whole bunch of crawlers that like get shifted like a decimeter or something because of a sync, the feet still stays at the old place. They just get dragged a little bit. So
Mm.
when you get a little bit of desync and catch up, it's just you'd never notice it, even
Interesting.
though there's so few bits used to synchronize them.
Wow. That's super cool.
I don't know if that's completely understandable for everybody, but yeah, it's since so many visual part, since the whole visual part of the crawler is like completely server again client simulated. It just clicks on the server clients, even though sometimes you just like have a crawler like just move a decimeter. It it it, it just looks like they move like normal, which
Interesting.
is
Interesting.
yeah.
And
And
then
so yeah, so that's one part. So that's how that fundamental constraint is solved, and there is room for 4096 crawlers. That gives you some
okay.
idea of how this and like the net
That'll fill up your
ID
screen. Yeah.
system. yeah, yeah. And the net ID system is just completely built around like this amount of IDs are just like reserved for the crawlers, and that's what they do. So it's built around that core. And then I haven't actually looked at the networking, like technically looked at the actual network footprint in quite a while, because I have another litmus test that the game has a fully functional replay system. So I can play a whole game and then I can just scrub around and play whatever parts and resimulate it in the editor and just fly around in the
Cool.
scene view
Yeah.
while the characters are running and shooting everything. It's kind of trippy actually, even for me. We had that in Battle Right, and that was for different reasons. I made it because I wanted to make the trailers that way.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure that's like totally
Yeah.
helpful.
So the replay is literally just the client, the local player sending all of the network data and all of its input data into a file. So how big that file is, that's my network footprint.
It makes sense.
And
Yeah.
and that's the network. That file is like, for just a normal client, it's rarely over like, I don't know, 40 megabytes for like 20 minutes play.
Wow.
So it's, yeah.
Yeah, not much
I
at
think
all.
I could probably squeeze, shove more crawlers into it if I wanted to.
That's cool. That's cool. So then, I guess to kind of go back to like synchronizing some of the crawlers. So you kind of mentioned that you're basically not really like syncing all of them every single frame. You're kind of like chunking them up a little bit. So
Yeah,
do you any,
spatialized.
yeah, do you any kind of like determination of like how close crawlers are to like the player? Like those might get synced more often as opposed to ones that are kind of further away.
Yes, and I do have a lot of code that tries to do this very cleverly, uh, but I think I actually commented a little bit of it out because it wasn't that necessary to do it super accurately or super optimized. But the way it works is that every crawler has a prio value that just increases every frame, um, and the increase is greater every frame the closer you are to one of the players, or the closer you are to one of the view vectors from the player.
Mm.
But there's 4 players, so there's, and they just whip around like, normal first person shooters.
Right, right,
So
right.
if it might be that I just actually commented out the view
So it's really just
prioritization.
position, yeah.
Yeah,
That
but
makes
they
sense.
like, so that they just get more priority the closer they are to the player, and that's
Right, right.
cumulative, right? So they accumulate that value, and then when I go in to analyze, I just find the box with the highest absolute value of that prioritization value.
That makes
Does it make
sense.
sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
totally. So yeah, it'd be like the things that are closer would get updated more often, but then if something's kind of far away but it hasn't been updated in a while, then that might have a higher priority, so that'll get synced.
yeah. And I think I have something like 7-second timeout or something, and honestly, I haven't really, tried to tweak this and see where the edges of the stability is, because it hasn't been a problem in any way, even not even like CPU wise. So dots for the win.
Nice. So to kind of I guess talk a little bit about your play testing a little bit. What have you kind of been doing as far as play testing? Like I know you're kind of a solo developer, so how have you been kind of like testing your game, like making sure the co-op and multiplayer and that stuff is all rock solid?
Yeah. First of all, I have a few friends who are very generous with their time to jump in and
Nice.
try it. But it's actually one of the biggest challenge, and I feel almost a little bit stupid sometimes for doing this big of a for. And we were 2 people from the beginning, I should say. So it wasn't like I made this choice completely like that. But anyway. So I have like a whole bunch of tools that helps me do this very, very efficiently. Uh, so first of all, like I said, you can play it without having any connection to Steam. So I can just build the game and have like however many instances of the game running on my own computer, and just like tab around with them and try stuff. But also, and that's sort of the best test. But also, I can, in the game, I can actually make a copy of the client world with all the stuff loaded in. I just make a copy of it, and I connected to the original, the server version of it, with like a dummy network solution that just emulates how it is, just sending packages towards each other.
Yeah.
And then it's like it's very it's kind of weird or interesting how it works out, because since it's a multiplayer game, if you jump into the game and you have this other client which just spawned in, and which I created parallelly inside of the editor, just runs in another world, that guy shows up in the game, right? So I see him in the game, and then I don't even need to like switch between something else, switch to render the other world or anything. I just like take my camera and just put it on the remote player that I see that comes from the parallel world. So like basically it looks like I'm spectating another person from the network and controlling their input. So then I can, you see what I mean?
Weird,
I'm
yeah.
just spectating the other world that I just spun up, and I think there's a limitation in the hybrid render or entities graphics, and yeah, they renamed that stuff.
Yeah. Entities graphics is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't really, I think, flip between rendering different worlds.
Yeah, you
Last time
can't.
I checked.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, so I have to do that. But like I said, so when I try to when I implement new stuff, I just jump into the game, to this parallel system, and then I just have like F1, which I switch between the two different players on, and I
Oh,
just
cool.
try it out. So, and it's like,
That's a
I don't know, 4 seconds more loading time.
Oh, cool. That's a
It's
smart solution for that problem.
Yeah, it took a while, but it was very worth it. And it's a little bit delayed, so you can't really play the game really, and it's laggy.
Right. But you can just still kind of get a feel for
yeah, you can just make yourself invulnerable and just try it out, and just don't focus on playing the game properly. Just do the mechanics and see if they work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And so, do you have any like tools that you have built for like simulating any kind of network lag and packet loss and things like that?
No, not actually. The Leadgreen has some built into them. I think I've just like ran through them once to try it out. No, maybe that'll bite me in the ass someday. But I
I'm
haven't
just
really
curious.
had that problem. I did make excuse me. I did make a simulator in a completely different project, where I just made a ball go like specific, like it was sort of simulated, and just made an arc, and then I threw on a lot of networking problem simulation on it, on a twin ball, and then I just implemented a bunch of different interpolation algorithms, like just like the first most naive one, and then like upgraded it until like, yeah, that will work, and then I basically transferred or rewrote it into the game. But that was very long time ago.
Okay, cool.
I think I shared that on Reddit one day, that whole project,
Oh, cool.
because that's something to really, everybody who want to try to make networking games should try that one. Like try to set up a super jittery situation. Like, how could I fix this?
Yeah. No,
Because it's an
that totally
interesting
makes
problem to
sense. Yeah,
solve.
absolutely.
Yeah, but it's it's sort of the usual suspects in the solution, on the solution side. Yeah, it's just like a whole bunch of all the positions are built in the history of the like 2 seconds, and then you just interpolate between them whatever the timing says you probably are, and hopefully it works itself out.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then I want to talk a little bit about the kind of like replay system you mentioned a little bit. So how has like the just kind of like data oriented design and kind of having that separation of data from the systems, has that been helpful for creating that replay system? Has that kind of like been easier to create something like that because of the data oriented design, rather than if you're making a fully object oriented project?
So, I would say yes, but the thing is that the part of data-oriented design that helps you with that replay problem, or like, essentially being able to easily pick out exactly what you want to save and have it like very clearly laid out, and you don't accidentally like serialize a whole class with a lot of stupid stuff inside of it. You just have exactly what you need. um, that helps, and like if you make a single player game, that would very much help to have that kind of a structure on it. But the thing is, when you're making your multiplayer game, especially if you're making a lot of the serialization code by yourself,
Mm-hmm.
or at least like selecting what part of the game should be serialized and deserialized when. If you write that code, the selection of the right values to save is already made for another reason. And like that selection and that workflow is a lot easier if you have the component system, entity systems thing. But it's still something that it's still a lot easier if you're already making a multiplayer game.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I was thinking about there was that game that was showcased that Unity kind of showcased at GDC 2 years ago called Detonation Racing, where they kind
Yeah, I
of
saw
built
that.
out they kind of built out a basically replay type solution where they just kind of gathered the inputs for the particular player, and if there was like a bug or something that happened in the game, they were able to kind of replay those inputs to basically replicate that bug. They could also like change code and then run that replay again to see if that bug was fixed. So they could do a lot of like really cool, interesting things with like resimulation.
Yeah.
Have you kind of used it for that at all? Like your kind of replay system, like been able to kind of replay things when you like found a bug or something like that, or has it been kind of helpful for development, or is it mostly just kind of a nice replay feature to have to create cool videos and stuff like that?
It's actually like it's almost a little bit the other way around, because what happens is that I like I like making trailer footage, so that's one of the things that I like, why I chose to spend a lot of time with it. I think it's very fun to work with that tool set essentially. uh, and when so I had the replay system very early in the game, and also the camera movement system and everything like that. So when you then are trying out your replay system, what you are essentially doing is looking at your game from the perspective of a observer. If you had an observer for a live networked game, right? That's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. It's just that the data comes from a file.
Right.
So if you have issues with the visual timings and stuff in the game that would show up for a client, a spectator, another player, if they would see it, you see it as well in the same way in the replay. So by making the replay work better, I know the game looks better in the end for the players
Mm.
on network. So, and that was like I realized that kind of early, and then I was like, yeah, I'm going to put effort into the replay system, even though I think I don't know if it's worth it for just the trailers, because I think I'm forcing myself to make the game, and I'm finding a lot of visual bugs, like
I'm sure there's like
visual bugs as a consequence of the network.
I'm sure there's like a bunch of things too where you might not even see it as you're like playing the game, but then as you like replay it back, then now that you're like not focused on what's going on in the game, you can kind of like look at more of
Yeah,
like what's happening around. Like you
yeah.
can kind of find those other things as well.
Especially if you just like I have I don't know if I said that, but I have the so you can jump into a replay in with the VR headset and look at the
Oh,
replay.
cool.
Yeah. Oh, I haven't. Yeah,
No, no,
that was
no.
the big thing I made on Battle Rights. Battle Rights. All
Okay.
most of the trailers was made in VR, or at least when it wasn't in game footage. That was made in VR, by me or by some of our
Interesting.
external. So the trailer we just watched, I think all of the footage that is not from the POV from the players are me standing right behind us here, holding a Vive headset and moving my hands to direct the camera.
Wow, that's so cool. So you were able to like basically use the VR headset to kind of like
No,
physically
no,
like use that as like a camera to kind of like track like where you're looking.
no, not the headset is just for me to see what I'm doing. I have another camera in the hand controllers, in the motion controllers.
Oh, interesting.
So I'm just like watching as, and it's this is I have a like I think it's a 3070 GTX card or something, but it's still laggy on my. So it's this is not something that's like technically easy to make it like user friendly. But I have like 30 FPS basically in it, but it works. It actually works, as you can see in the trailer. So the most useful version of it is like I have my right hand controls the camera position with some smoothing. So I have actually the Cine Machine built. It's built on top of the Cine Machine.
Yeah.
So I get the smoothing systems from Cine Machine to use, and then with my camera trigger, with my other hand, I use to aim the look at.
Okay.
So and imagine that in real life you could never do that because your left hand would be in front of the screen or on of the camera.
Yeah.
That's an impossible shot to make in the real world, but in virtual reality you can do it. You just hide the
That's
layer
so
of the
cool. That's a smart idea. Yeah, being able to like basically be in VR and you're kind of like, real time doing like cinematography, like pointing exactly where the
yeah.
camera is going. That's really interesting.
And then you pull up. So remember that I think both the new live action that was the wrong word. The new Lion King thing I think was one of the first who used a similar tactic. So an Avatar I think had a similar thing. So it's not like it's but I haven't seen a lot of games do this in this way. And then you understand complete really ties together why I have the replay system, because what I do is I replay the stuff. I record the camera motion, and I record the camera motion to file, so I have it. And it's just like even though I have like 30 FPS, I make sure to like serialize it with a very smooth linear
Mm-hmm.
animation curve. Well, not exactly an animation curve, just like raw positioning. But
Right,
I
right,
smooth
right.
them out
Yeah.
good, and then I like take off my headset and look at the screen, and I'm like, yeah, I think that's a good shot, and then I press record, and then it goes it and records it to a video, non-real time, so I get the
Gotcha. Okay.
perfect 60 FPS.
That's awesome. So it's like you're basically like, yeah, just like when you're in VR, you're basically just kind of getting the framing and positioning right and everything, but that's not necessarily the final, render of it yet. But then like,
No, yeah,
yeah, it just kind of keeps track of the position of the camera and all that, and then you can kind of
yeah, and
play that back. That's
like
super interesting.
people might be annoyed at stuff like this, since I showed the gameplay trailer of like it's like really actual gameplay, but when I uh, render it out, I usually just turn on a real-time fully rendered reflection probe on the camera. Like, well, now it's not, this is not well, maybe with the absolute latest GPU this is
Sure,
possible,
sure.
but for me it's like, well, I get those little nice reflections on the weapons, and as you said, I can tweak a lot of stuff after I got the basic nice motion with the camera, and then I can go in with Cine Machine and increase or decrease the smoothing, and try to stick the depth of field focus at something, or like adjust that, and just like look at the loop, because I put it in a tiny loop in the replay, and look at it over and over again until I like, that's the shot I want, and then I press render.
That's great. And yeah, because you have that like just regular replay, you can get like multiple angles of the same kind of shots and like, test different things out, see how they look, and yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, so I don't know if that makes my trailer more or less impressive now that that I have so many fancy tools.
I think so. That's super cool. I'm blown away by that.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of talking about more some of like the visual stuff because you kind of brought it up. I saw some people were kind of asking in here about do you make your own art and kind of I guess we can kind of start talking about like the art side of things. And I know like we had kind of briefly mentioned that you're using HDRP, so I kind of want to ask you a little bit about kind of how that's going. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the visuals.
So I don't make my own art asset like the the meshes or the textures. That's like the one that I would love to be able to do a little bit more of it and have time to learn to, make stuff that sort of works.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's just way too much time to get into it. And the first time I tried to, I got into game development, like, I don't know, 16 years ago. I tried to learn to model first, and I realized I'm not very artistic. So I don't make my own models. A lot of the models in the game are bought from the asset store or from other places, or just found some license free stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and some of them, like the fish and the map, which is inside of the town, or like the city map. That's actually made by a friend of mine who was like interning for me this spring. So he made almost all of that stuff from
Oh,
scratch for
cool.
me, just
Wow.
for that map. So I'm a little bit concerned that that map will look so much better than everything else. But what you gonna do? Well, I think it's gonna be fine. He moved on and are working with other people right now. So I have what I have, and I may do. So that stuff I don't do, and the guns and the characters my old colleague made. Um, but we worked together to do it. It's not like
Yeah,
he
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
like popped it out. We worked. We had, like, I think 3 versions of every game, or of every gun before we were happy with it.
Wow.
So it was a lot of iterations and a lot of stuff, and yeah, and then I fine tuned the material properties of those things to a T. So, but everything else that is visual, like effects and everything like that, all of it I make. And shaders, there's, like, I don't know, maybe 50 custom shaders in this game.
Wow. And
Yeah,
how are you creating the shaders? Is that with shader graph, or are you actually writing shader code, or?
most shader graph, a little bit shader code here and there, because well, maybe not now necessarily, but it used to be that I couldn't really do that. Some of the custom stuff I made wasn't really possible to do with in shader graph when I tried.
Gotcha.
Like Vertex ID, I don't think was available when I tried something with the crawlers, and I'm like, that's
Hmm.
not possible to do without Vertex ID. Now now they have it, but
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Interesting.
So I actually remade that to be in Shady Graph. I love Shady Graph. I think it's an awesome tool.
Is there a particular like effect or shader that you've created in shader graph that you're like particularly proud of? Like something that you're like what's your kind of your favorite thing that you've made?
Yeah, and it's actually up on the asset store if you want to see it. It's a parallax interior shader.
Okay.
So all of the windows that are lit in the game, none of them have actual interiors. It's just
Mm.
5 different, and I mean that shader, you can buy it, and you can and there I yeah, and you can also find like tutorials to make a basic version of it. But I made like a really proper, super advanced thing. Because I thought that was a really good idea to get a lot of content and visual things out of the game without having to have the actual models.
Gotcha. So you put
So
it up on the asset store? You like your thing?
yeah, if you search for fake interior,
Oh, there you go. Kanakle Bang Productions.
yes. Let me- So yeah, uh, it was a lot of work to make that asset store friendly.
Oh, did they have you kind of like go through like a couple different like iterations of
No. Was accepted the first time. It's just that I had a lot of. I wanted to make a tool and a shader and a documentation that actually made it work good.
Mm.
So there's like there's like I have I don't. There's just one shot of this in the trailer, so it might people don't probably. But you can see the tiling. One of the first images. There's like tiling interiors.
I'm trying to see if
There's like the third image or something.
Well, I'll play the trailer for the asset on stream. How about that?
That, I don't know. It's pretty basic. That's my weakest part. I think you can play a little bit of it.
No, I think it looks cool with that like building that you have like all the different like colored rooms and everything.
Yeah. So this is, what you're looking at are just single quads stretched out,
Oh,
and
okay.
then
Yeah, yeah.
everything is just tiled with math.
Wow.
And all of the different light strength of the interiors, and the different, you can see it's all also different light temperature on the lighting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like some are kind of
All
more
of that is
white, some
just,
are a little more yellow. Yeah.
yeah, completely like customizable in the shader procedurally.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it took a while to make that
I
happen, I
like
can tell
I
you.
like the colored one though.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was absolutely nuts.
This looks like it's
um
pulled straight out of your game.
yeah, yeah. um th- that map, exactly that map, has not come over to the new refactored version yet.
Oh,
It's
okay.
on the menu, but it's gonna come. But that's one of the map I haven't converted yet. I focused so much on the like three or four others.
That's
Yeah.
sweet.
So that's the one I'm most proud of. But there's there's a few. All of the enemies are custom shaders because they are completely GPU based animations. Um, so when the the big blob that like flies around and has like a shield in front of it, uh, that's completely just a shader that just does random stuff with an icosphere to make it like flimmer and have some cool uh, emission patterns and stuff.
Interesting, interesting. I guess that kind of brings up a point about. I know this is something that people ask a lot about. Is how do you do animations with dots and ECS and all that? So how have you kind of been doing yeah, your animations?
It's actually three different things I've done. So first of all the enemies are completely GPU animated with the material property system
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah,
HDR.
definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I just like throw over a few floats that shows this is how much HP and yeah, and where you are in the whole attack flow, because they change how they stretch and warp and flim around based on where they are in their
Like this kind of
gameplay
like maybe
attack
like
flow.
a wind up to their attack and then they attack and kind of like
Exactly,
a yeah.
exactly. Like squishing and stretching in the way they are traveling when they're flying around and stuff like
Mm,
that. So all of them are like GPU based custom shader animated, and then we have the players who are just straight up skinned mesh renderers, hybrid style. I just throw a bunch of data from the entity component world onto a game object, which has a normal mechanism animator system, and that just handles that. But there's a ton of IK in that system. So all the arms and
mm.
the head are completely IK, and there's even more stuff that are IK. I've sort of I've skipped learning to animate stuff, and I do it with IK instead. I mean, I can animate. It's not like, but I think it's satisfying for me because then it's more flexible for me to change stuff in the
Sure.
in the
Yeah, yeah,
future.
yeah. So
So
is all the IK stuff happening kind of on the ECS side, and that is just kind of sent over to the
no,
front end mesh, or that?
that's I think it's Unity's animation rigging package I use right
Okay,
now.
okay.
Yeah, so that's but and like that's one of those things where as a responsible game programmer you need to like is because that would take more time to make it in ECS, because it's just there's no like off the shelf thing that works as well as the ones that have been on the asset store for like 5-10 years, or Unity by themselves have developed and are like integrated with the skin mesh renderer and all the stuff.
Hmm.
That's one of those cases where I'm like, I could probably do this from scratch in ECS and just throw it over to the player. But I realized like there's 4 players there. I will gain absolutely nothing except for a little bit of experience writing that code in ECS. So that was just a especially since the rest of it was managed and game object, not ECS at all. The rest of the character, I mean.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah. How many like players are in your game? Is it kind of like 2 to 4
4.
players?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess 1 to 4. You can play it by yourself as
Okay.
well. Yeah. When the jumper, the one who jumps around with the shield, when he hits you, you get constrained and you get stuck. And in multiplayer, you're stuck. And your friends need to come and shoot it off your feet, basically, because it sticks you to the ground.
Okay.
And in single player, it's you just whip the mouse around until you get free.
Okay, cool. So you
So
kind of have
that's
some things in there if you want to like play single player. It's not going to like completely break the game when there's things that your teammates are
obviously.
required
And I
for.
play it a lot myself to try it out in single player, and I have no bots, so I don't have a choice but to make it really playable in single player. But one more little detail there. The third animation is like the railgun, the gun that shoots like a straight
Like a big giant laser kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah, that one has animations when it's like doing stuff, and all of the weapons are completely ECS, right? So that's made by. I actually made a library which converts basic old school Unity animations. The ones you can do in editor where you just move around stuff and record.
Right.
It converts as long as it transforms on off sound and a few more. They convert that animation into ECS and uses blob assets to store all the curves, and then just play. And that's like very much like a decentralized system where you just have like a little root entity component on the root which just says play, and it's like just pushes a timer forward in the animation, and then you have all of the other individual entities that has their own animation relative to whatever. They just look at it at the root and like, where are you in the animation, and then they just sample the respective curve and animate. So everything is like pretty actually like parallelized animation.
That's super cool. So is that a technique that you're using in your game, or is that just something that you'd seen?
No, I made it for my game.
Okay.
So I made a library that converts the Unity animations to.
That seems super useful.
easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I there's a lot of this which I'm like, I should just make it open source and throw it up on the Unity forums.
Yeah, that sounds like a helpful thing.
I don't know. I'm afraid of sharing my code sometimes.
Yeah,
And
put it up on
also
the asset store.
well, that is a whole other. Well, maybe free, but to take money for it, it's a lot of hassle to handle the support for those things.
Yeah.
And I want to make games, not answer
true.
questions on email all day.
Fair.
But yeah, maybe I should. Also, it's a question about my company, what's stuff that has worth for the company. What should I just like show off and
Makes sense.
open source? It's hard to know. I'm not particularly against any open source, but still, I got to make a decision based on what's best to have a company that survives.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So kind of talking a little bit about maybe some of the procedural generation. You'd kind of mentioned that that's mostly stuff kind of on the game object side. And then I do see a question from a little bit ago. They want to know how like the nav mesh works for your AIs, especially when you're doing procedural generation.
There is no nav mesh at all. The jumpers who jump around, they just like, they search for a line of sight with you, and if they don't have it, they try to like they just randomly every frame, they have like, I don't know, 20 tries every frame to raycast randomly around and find another surface somewhere. And if that surface point that they hit sees a player, then it's like, oh, we can get back to the players like that. And because they spawn so close to the player, or they always spawn in line of sight of the player, and they're very fast, it's almost impossible to run away from them and make them lose you, even though there's no AI at all, or nav mesh at all. And the crawlers, they are like that looks stupid. They just walk at you, with a little bit of a randomized like off angle, so not everybody just perfectly straight to
Right.
you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They have a little bit, and they switch that every like 5 seconds or something. So they have some like that, and when they check for you for their target, they check like, is the target within like 90 degrees of my where I'm looking right now, and if they are, they just like swap it and go straight for the player with a little bit of an offset. And if you're behind them, they don't care about you, because you can't, unless you have an avmash, you can't actually make sure you're walking in the right direction in 3D in that situation. So they just keep walking wherever they were going, but eventually they may walk up a wall and around an edge and then come down, and then like, oh, now I can see him. He was there all along, and then they just start tracking you again.
Interesting. So it's a lot of like physics based, kind of like ray casting and stuff like that.
Yeah, they are completely raycast based, all of
Wow.
it.
Interesting. And so
They
you,
have a
I was just gonna ask, you're using the dots physics for all that stuff.
yeah, yeah. I've used the dots physics for everything. I have some gripes with the dots physics system, but it
Well,
works
let's get
well.
into it. I want to hear about it.
the First of all, rotating children inside, rotating or moving stuff when you have like nested colliding
Yeah,
or
yeah.
physics involved object
Right.
can sometimes be a nasty mess, because the thing is that Unity it's so optimized for baking out the whole scene,
Mm-hmm.
everything perfectly nice and static and sweet. But if you change something, you need to like you need to be marked as dynamic or something, and you need to really take care of making sure that all the object is nested perfectly correctly with all the colliders and bodies, and what's static and what's not static, and also then you know they remove the local transform on a lot of stuff, which because this is not going to move, so we can just have the local to world and it renders here. That's it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they remove a lot of stuff that's not needed. Now, I think that's nice. I really do think that's nice. But it's like it's sometimes a real hassle to just like make sure all the parts that's involved in your physics thing is perfectly set up. And I don't know. I think it's a tooling and a little bit of an like being more I don't know what to call it, but me being easier to digest how it works, combined with tooling that they need to improve to make it, because essentially physics, the old ones in game objects,
Yeah.
it has similar problems if you do that, static baking, static, or nest bodies or stuff like that. It also just behaves strangely. But in ECS with Unity physics, it's just like there's a lot of head scratching in the last 3 days. I can tell you that.
Well, I know you're not on like the latest version of Entities 1.0, but do you know if yours has like when you're using authoring components and you have to like get a reference to the entity that you're adding components to and like define the transform usage flags? Are you that still might be, I think that might be the next version past you, right?
Yeah, I have the baker. I don't have, so I need to specify which entity and need to specify the transform usage yet. I can skip both of them. I can just say add
Yeah, yeah.
component or get entity. But that's the baker also. Oh, holy shit, the baker. I am so, yeah, I understand. I've read a lot about it. I understand why it is as it is. They want to have it, what do they say? Like when you can like revert it halfway and then continue baking from halfway baked. They call it something, and it's the same thing with a lot of programming language, where you don't have to compile the whole thing. You have
Hmm.
like I'm losing the word right now. Anyway, I understand what they've done. It's optimized to make it really fast. But for my game, it's really, I don't have a lot of stuff to bake. It
Mm.
takes like 3 seconds to bake the whole game from scratch. So it's not a big deal. And all of the things that these restrictions they made in the bakers to make it reversible in that way, they just cause issues for my straightforward code. So I don't know if you try this, but if you have like a game object and you have the game and the game object is referencing some other game object, a child inside of the prefab, and you want to add a component to that child on the conversion, you can't add a component to another child that you are not baking right now. Have you seen this?
That may be different with the newer versions.
I asked about it in a thread, and they just like, yeah, this is how it is
Oh,
because
okay,
of.
okay. Maybe that's not something that I've necessarily tried then, to do like something with a child directly.
Yeah, because for me it's like, imagine my player. It's a player prefab. It's a bunch of stuff under the player prefab, and if I then like pull in one of the child game objects into the root player mono behavior that breaks everything, and I want to add a component to that child that
Right.
is like way into the, I can't. I have to like make a mono behavior, put on that child, and make a baker on that child that puts that stuff on.
Okay, okay.
At least that's how it works in the experiment 15 version. And I just commented out that code in the Unity ECS code. So I just like, nope. And I just commented out and I tried it and everything worked, and it's been doing like that for half a year. But I get corrupted entity caches sometimes. So I need to like clear the entity cache and restart Unity for it to work properly.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was one other thing that I was kind of wanted to ask you about a little bit, is like how much have you modified some of the entity's source code at all to, do some things that, maybe weren't supported, or like, fix some issues that you had with them?
Yeah, I made a lot of different things with that stuff. There's two things that I can bring up that actually probably is kind of interesting for people. First of all, archetypes make, even though you might have like a specific archetype with a specific component set, and like your component A is never used, or no, wrong. This archetype is always like that, and it goes through a few systems like this, and I have complete control over it. I know exactly where the dependencies starts and end. If you have local to world pulled into that on that entity, and you need to change the world coordinates of the character of the object, then you're gonna pull in all of the other local to world dependencies into your systems, right? So like, oh, I can't go and make this change to this character or this stuff because I'm already doing stuff with local to world. But this other stuff are in its complete own chunks. It's its own archetype, and
Yeah.
like even though they use the same component type,
It's still
they are like
technically a
never
dependency. Yeah.
exactly. So that in that case, I've actually made. This was an idea or a tip from my old colleague at Stanlock. I made like I modified in the Unity component store so I can get just the raw array of like the local to world array inside of the chunk.
Okay.
And just like without just the most unsafe stuff ever. But I just get that array, and I can, because I know I'm the only one who has it.
Right.
I can just
Yeah,
write to it in parallel however I wish, and
Nice.
no other dependencies care about how I do it. So that lets me have the crawlers. Their update method are completely devoid from basically any other dependencies. And there's a ton of stuff which just happens completely parallel to the crawlers, because the crawlers can go in and like the local to world, that's the only component I use, that everything else is uses too. But I just fetch the pointer to my local to world array, and nobody should care about this. And then I just do the transformation. So that's a modification I made, and that's just
Cool.
like the purest of unsafe stuff.
Yeah.
And I've also made a modification. So if you have like your fixed system are running and you have lag a ton, like a fixed rate group, and you
Mm-hmm.
lag a ton, then you have always have to catch up. Like
Right.
literally,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
going
yeah.
from zero, however you're doing it, and you have to catch up. And that doesn't jive well when I start up everything and then generate the world and just like super lag the game for like 5-10 seconds while I load it. So then it happens like I go into the game and then just like the physics engine is just like running 30 frames every frame
Yeah,
for like
yeah.
10 seconds to get back. And I've modified the group to be able to handle that and to be able to basically shut down the physics group and say like, you're not going to go anywhere
Oh,
until I'm
cool.
done with all the
That
loading.
seems very helpful, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very weird. It's just another constructor inside of the fixed group, whatever it's called, and just like, yeah, make it possible to start up later. But Unity hasn't made that, so I had to modify it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. So I'm just taking a look through some of these other questions here. Have you written any unit tests for your ECS code at all?
I've written tests, but not the. I believe there's a formal thing that's called unit test, and Unity has some tool sets
Yeah,
that's
there is
involved
kind of like
in
a
that.
test runner in
Yeah, yeah,
Unity.
yeah. Like green play arrows and stuff, and you can
Right. Yeah.
just,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I've seen that. I probably should, but I haven't used that. I have some tests in it, like the code generation generates, a command system, so I can send commands back and forth
Hmm.
between client and server. And on startup, I can just like say in a config file, like make sure that all of the commands work properly, and just sends a bunch of commands, try every combination of commands on
Gotcha.
startup,
Okay.
and then like it, and then just have the reference data that it should receive, and like, yeah, this looks nice. And there's some stuff like that, which is like, because yeah, some parts of the game are just like, it's very much a good thing to make sure that you can just like, did I break anything?
Yeah. 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 Totally. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see what we have here. We've kind of talked about a good amount of these here. Let's see. Did you have any tricks to manage large entities with physics, collider, and rigid body attached to it? May cause some bad performance, especially when the physics solver iterations run. So yeah, if you have any kind of larger entities with physics, have you kind of ran into any issues with that, or maybe even just kind of talking about some more of the other physics issues that you've kind of encountered and ways that you've kind of solved those?
No, I have no. I think I understand the problem. Large entities with a physics, yeah. So like large, it does mean like large physics colliders,
That's
probably, I
yeah,
guess.
that's how I'm kind of
Yeah,
interpreting the question.
and
Yeah.
like, so I don't have anything big like that, and but I would guess the performance issue has to do with that. If you have large enough, you can't really spatially optimize the collider in the what's called bounding volume hierarchy, BH, the data structure they build
Yeah, yeah,
up to
yeah.
be able
Basically,
to handle that.
the octree that it's generating.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, but I do. But well, I mean, if it's just a big box, I don't really know why it would be a physics problem, even just solving. Like, well, maybe just like if you have enough contact points, it's really tricky to solve that.
Hmm.
I would probably just try to go over to Havoc if I had that issue, because Havoc, has stateful physics solving, which is, just helps with the performance. But I've never encountered. Side note on the big large thing, if it's that you have like a big physics body with a lot of sub um, sub colliders. Uh, I don't know how it does it with the baker, if you like have like a big scene and you actually bake the scene and stuff. But Unity has like an exposed function that's like I don't know what's it called, something. combine colliders into a compound collision collider.
Mm.
So you can like just pick out a whole bunch of
Right.
colliders and then their world position, and then it's like make a compound collider out of this. And that compound collider is a lot more optimized than having all the individual colliders.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
since I generate my whole map from scratch, I generate everything with individual colliders, and then just before I convert all of them to all of the static ones to one compound collider, and the performance difference are gigantic. It's like
Interesting.
30. It's like half the performance if I keep all of the individual small. But for me, that's reasonable from my perspective,
Yeah.
because
No, that's a
I
great
presume
technique
that the
for that.
compound collider is just really optimized to handle that kind of stuff. And yeah, so that's something to take a look at if you have several child colliders, combined colliders. I don't know, some utility function.
So do you kind of
Um,
like do that almost for like in like one level, like all the buildings, like you just like the ground and all the buildings and everything, you combine that all into like one single collider, or is it like kind of still broken up a little bit where you might have like, you know, one city block, that's all one collider and like and so on, or is it like literally everything in the level like that's static?
Literally everything that's static.
Wow.
And I ran into the nesting limit a few times because of it. That's a lot of colliders, I can tell you. But like this is just such an extreme use case I have it for.
Sure.
So it's
Yeah.
um but yeah, I spawn everything, and then I deactivate, put disabled on everything that's just gonna move, and then I just combine everything. Hopefully it works. Right after I generated everything. So it's just throw everything into the same compound collider, and it works. I think
Cool.
it's very similar to how it would work if you were to bake it.
And how would you say, just kind of like ballparking, like, you know, approximately, like, what are the size of kind of like your average levels? Do you know kind of like a meter by meter count?
400 by 400 meters.
Okay.
So it's
So
big enough
decently
that you
sized,
can
but it's not like,
run
yeah, like
around.
massive
Yeah,
multiplayer or anything, or.
but the there isn't that. I don't think like the size is any big issue in this case. The size would be a big issue in one of the maps that I light bake in the loading screen also.
Mm.
But for the ones that don't need light baking, uh, the one John's help John move, that one I can probably make like twice, 4 times as big, and it wouldn't be a problem in any real way. I don't actually know if you should like slice up stuff. um yeah. I just realized his question about big colliders. Yeah, he must mean like, rigid bodies, actually movable objects, and doing the iterations, physics solving on a big movable object. Because
Mm.
I just realized I do have a large collider in my game. The whole damn world is a large collider essentially,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
But
not in that
it's
case.
a
It's
different
just
than,
static.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I had just had a brain fart, and like, did I really just like turn that around in my head? But no, I was on the right track.
Okay. And so it doesn't sound like you're doing anything with like having multiple sub scenes where you're like loading sub scenes in and out at all. You're not doing any of that.
I my whole game is just one subscene for all the prefabs and one subscene for all of, respectively, for all the maps.
Yeah,
Or
okay.
no, not even that. One subscene for all the prefabs, dynamic prefabs, and one subscene for all the combined prefabs that gets baked in, and that gets generated out on the map.
Mm.
So what happens is like the generation is built as a graph tool, so I can like make a big graph out of exactly what's going to happen in the generation steps, step by step.
Oh, cool.
And then when I press build, it iterates, because the graphs are essentially scriptable objects in the background, right?
Mm.
So I just do some reflection stuff in C# and just find every child game object that it exists in any graph, in any node, anywhere. And like, here is a list of all the unique game objects that I ever spawn into the map. Put them into the subscene and bake them. So then I can just load in the subscene and pick and choose and pull out my different prefabs, entity prefabs, and then run the generation code and put them into the world.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of like an interesting thing that I wanted to kind of chat about a little bit about. It's kind of like how you do your prefab management. So how are you kind of like finding references to like the, specific prefabs that you want to load at a given time or any of that?
Dynamic stuff load at a given time. So like when I'm right in the middle of a gameplay, I have just a global enum based list. So I don't know, maybe like 30 enums. So it isn't a lot actually. The game is not that big in that sense. So I just have a big list that gets and that's manually made by me. I just like, oh, I need a new enemy, and I write a new
Gotcha.
entry
Yeah,
into
yeah,
the, and then I get in one of the editor windows, I just get a new slot, and then I pull in the game object in there, and that gets baked into the prefab subscene.
yeah. Okay.
And
Gotcha.
then when it needs it, I just everywhere I use it, I just have like, oh, this is the entity, this is the enum that I'm looking for, the new enemy, and it gives me back and looks that up in a list of like GUIs, and then that finds the prefab in question, the entity
Okay.
prefab in question,
Gotcha.
and then I have it.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
I don't
So
know.
you're not having to deal with like hundreds of different enemy variations and item types and everything. So it's like not really
No,
that difficult for you to just create an enum and for you to just do a kind of quick lookup like
but
that.
that's as I said, that's for the all the dynamic stuff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
In the on the maps, I have, I don't know, a few hundred different prefabs.
Yeah. Of all the different types of buildings and everything like that.
Yeah, actually, yeah. There's only one building. All the other buildings are modeled with the Pro Builder on the fly.
Oh. Okay. Cool.
So yeah, that's kind of a big thing. But that's just a graph that keeps track of everything, and then when I want to build it, it just iterates through the graph and finds everything that it needs to, like, yeah. So it's kind of a complicated system, but it works really well, and it's really easy to work with. When I just want to add like, oh, I want to have a flower pot on every street corner, I just pull out like decorate street corner node and just connect that into the right part of the system, and like, oh, this is the new flower pots, and I put that into a normal game object thing, and when I then build it, just like, oh, this is a new flower pot, let's build that game entity prefab into the subscene so it's available when we play.
Nice. So yeah, I guess to kind of talk a little bit about kind of your random generation, like why did you kind of initially choose to use random generation? And yeah, I kind of want to maybe, talk a little bit about, how you set that up and then also like kind of tying that into the design of the game. Like what was kind of the decisions that you've been making from a design perspective to make that procedural generation interesting and compelling as a game mechanic?
Yeah. There's two reasons why it exists. First of all, I like to think that it's design decision completely, but it's very almost 50% of it is like I prefer to convert all my problems into programming problems. That's why I have a lot of procedural
Fair.
animations.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So and also, but the other one is like I really do like, well, I don't like when I'm making a game and the levels becomes just a chore for me as a developer to just run through and do everything to test it. I think it's a little bit interesting for me to have like where I can, every time I start it, there's a little bit of freshness to it. It's not
Yeah,
exactly the
yeah,
same
yeah.
every time. And I think it helps the development of the game. Then I guess you really need to pull out good this game design to make it replayable out. Even, I mean, the level can't be the only thing. It needs to be a game that it's replayable in its essence, even with or without the levels
Right.
regenerated.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
still, it helps a lot to have new, fresh layout every time you play the game. It's always a little bit interesting to, oh, okay, so that's there right now. Okay, that's interesting. So that's but yeah, it was 50-50 between those two. Like that, this is probably the best way to make maps for me, because I'm not really that good at level designing, and it sounds like a good way to make the game more fun.
Awesome, awesome. Real quick shout out to the homie Ed Mayart in the chat. What's going on, Ed? Friend of mine.
It
Yeah.
may, oh, Turbo. Yeah, you should say my nickname in your university is Turbo. I bet some of my
Yeah.
friends who are watching this are like super confused. Like, did Tobias start
Turbo
a
and
YouTube
Turbo.
channel?
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, so with the kind of like procedural generation, like you feel like that adds a lot of replayability to your game. So like even though maybe you are getting kind of some of the same instructions that maybe you've kind of already played through before, you can kind of experience it in a different way.
Yeah, and like because sometimes something are like really in an inconvenient place, and that makes it interesting. Um, and like I say, it just looks fresh longer. And also, since the game, the instructions that you're gonna do are, uh, um, it's not exactly like that right now, completely all the way, but as I said, you're gonna do more and more weird instructions as to break down the world more and more, and that can also be, general randomly generated. So you can like, oh, now I'm doing this instruction on this slight variation of the map. So it's a little bit more interesting. So it's not just the level. The instructions also help and are a little bit randomized every time you play.
Okay, cool,
So,
cool, cool.
sometimes you throw duckies into a dumpster, and sometimes you shoot them, and sometimes you should throw them off the map. Stuff like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love just kind of all like the little silly things that you've kind of added in there.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, we got
yeah.
Parker in the chat too. What's going on, man?
Parker, who's that?
He's Ed's son.
Oh, cool, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. So then yeah, I guess kind of like maybe kind of like talking about kind of some of the design and procedural generation for the different levels. Like how do you kind of like mix that up and kind of like randomize that for the different kind of settings that these games play out in?
Yeah, the um the procedural generation, making it like truly like random and like interesting every time, is still something I work on to make better. It's still, I'm not super happy with everything. It's hard. It's really hard to make it like what Minecraft has done. Just as an example, is like like when you made a procedurally generated system or a world, you look in Minecraft and you're like, holy damn, that's insane how interesting Minecraft is to just walk, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I would love to be able to approach that level more. I'm not remotely close to that. But generally speaking, the design has been to like, oh, I generate a mostly square layout, um, city blocks with some like cut off roads and stuff, and then I just put houses everywhere that I can, and then I just throw in as much decoration of random stuff that I can think of to make it just fun to go around and look. So, but sometimes I will wish to have like twice as many types of props to just throw in more stuff, and maybe I'll just throw in more stuff. The tools are certainly there to be able to do it, but yeah, it's really hard to make interesting procedurally generated stuff,
Yeah,
to
no,
make it
it is a
like
bit of a
really
challenge.
unique every time.
And yeah, so how many different like I guess like levels or settings, whatever you want to call them, like kind of like like higher level. I know you kind of have like some of the city ones, and there's kind of that like underwater one, and there's the one where there's that like AI coming out of the computer. Like about how many of those kind of different like main kind of settings do you have in your game?
Right now, eight.
Okay, cool.
um, Eight, and one of them is like not functional at all. But the aim is to have eight or maybe nine, depends on stuff. So there's like the city, there's like the suburban, there's this skyscrapers. That's the one who that's not functional at all. That's where grandma will be eventually. Um, yeah,
Help grandma across
no
the
joke.
road. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So imagine doing stupid stuff with that instead of helping across the road. I don't know. Could be pretty gory, I guess. I don't know how far I could pull it, but it's probably pretty fun. And then I have the the if you the boats and I don't know if you saw it, but one of the levels are like just like chunks of a road in space.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
That one's cool.
So the airplanes, the boats, and the road chunks are basically the same type of map. It's
Oh,
just that
okay.
so
You're
it's
just kind of
just like
swapping out like the thing that you're kind of jumping across,
yeah.
basically.
And there's some unique variations because the planes are all going straight forward, right? Because the planes are going in a straight line, or they are still, but they should look like they're going straight forward. And the boats are just scattered all over the place, and the chunks are going down all the way. Like
Mm,
every chunk is further down. So there's some variation. They're unique from each other, but it's essentially the same type of generating code. Um, and also like on the boats, like that looks like it's underwater, right?
right. Yeah.
But
But I
the
saw
reason
like
you see
gravity looked kind of normal still.
no, the gravity is actually half.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's why you don't need it to step down. You can jump so far.
Okay. Okay.
But also it's I've literally not decided if it's under or over water. If it's over water, then it's just over water but upside down because the water surface are actually just turned upside down, aimed down at you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a very strange map, and I just love to be able to just almost confuse myself about it.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah. So
Um.
that's the maps, and then the final one with the boss. That's just a mock-up for the trailer right now, but it's gonna look like that eventually, and it's gonna be some sort of random generation also. I'm trying to come up with more fun things to put in that, not only like oversized old computers. So that's an interesting, like thematically challenging thing to think about. Like, what should I put here? Maybe a big chess piece. Just go full blown on the surreal stuff.
Yeah. 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 Totally.
Yeah.
And so, what is kind of like the intention of like how you want people to play this game? Is it like, um, do they kind of like play through it once and then maybe play through it again and kind of see how things kind of change, or is it like, you're playing through and you're kind of like maybe expecting the player to fail the challenge or the instruction and they kind of restart and they kind of get a new experience with the new kind of random generation. I guess yeah. How do
Yeah.
people kind of play through your game? Like what's the overall?
The aim is to have it hard enough on like at least the third map and forward, hard enough to make it like, yeah, you are probably gonna have to restart it sometimes. And right now, one of the challenges are making the map long enough time wise to make it interesting, and at the same time hard. So you can have like if you played Left 4 Dead, they have like the big dramatical the drama what do you call it, dramatic curve of the how many crawlers, how many zombies are coming. So like
Mm,
if you stand still too much, they come, more of them come. If you come to
mm,
this place specifically and push this button, which you need to do, all of them come. But it's like a curve, you sometimes you feel like everything is just gonna go to hell and everybody's gonna die, and the next second it just stops almost. uh, I'm not trying to like mimic that completely, but I want to have the timing long enough that you can have that feeling. Like now it's really, we played for 10 minutes and there's like no crawlers left, and then 2 minutes later it's just pumping, and then make it hard enough so when you die and everybody dies, you get like this. You didn't read the instructions. Try again or give up. And if you try again, it just literally just regenerate the maps and just throws you in at the new generated map. So you need to figure out on the new layout. You only get one try with each seed.
okay.
Yeah, but it depends. Like honestly, if the game feels better to have it a little bit easier, that's maybe something to do also. I don't know. Play testing and stuff like that is gonna have to like iron some of those kinks out. It's certainly possible to go both ways for me.
Cool. And yeah, that kind of like leads me a little bit into another thing that I wanted to talk to you about is like, how do you actually make like interesting gameplay when you have, these like thousands and thousands of enemies? Like, when we're really, scaling up the difficulty of that, like how do you kind of like find that balance of like it, being fun without being overwhelming and still kind of like, not feeling boring or repetitive?
Yeah, it's very hard. I mean, I feel like I'm at the edge of my design capabilities totally. So
Mm.
that it's humbling to realize how hard it is to do. But sort of the initial thought about the game was that it's something fun around being stressed about all the crawlers while trying to do the instructions. But the instructions has been downgraded in complexity a little bit just because of this problem. And so I wish to have it, and I think I'm going to be able to reach this pretty good. I wish to have it like you see the instruction, you do it. It's a strange one, but it's not like hard. It's just like a little bit strange, and you do, and it's run around, throw stuff, and essentially all challenges or quests in games boils down to pretty simple mechanics. In the end, it's just like so it's run around, play stuff in the right place, and grab stuff, shoot stuff, all of those basic mechanics which a lot of games build on. And you should feel like, well, I can do this. And if you die, you're gonna be like, why? I know I can do this. Let me just try again. It's not that hard instructions. It's just a lot of crawlers, and I can shoot them. I can just be better with my weapons, and I can just try again and see if I can make it this time. That's what I'm aiming for, and that had been the plan for a very long time. To have that like annoying thing that you like, I can do this. I just need to try it again. Now I understand completely what I'm going to do, and then you get the map regenerated, and it's not the same instructions anymore.
Okay.
So
So
yeah.
so even when you regenerate the map, you like are not necessarily guaranteed to get the same instructions,
Yeah,
but it okay.
yeah. So the first one will be the same, but like narratively, the AI scientists are outside of the simulation communicating in and like, oh well, the AI is doing this thing now. You need to, yeah, the rubber duckies need to be thrown on the roof now. Throw all the rubber duckies on the roofs. That's how we solve this time. And then you do that, and like, okay, where's roofs that I can throw stuff on? And then you do that,
Yeah, I think
that
that's
kind of
that's
stuff.
that's super cool. It's like part of the game is like figuring out like what the instruction means, and like yeah, it's like seeing what's
Yeah.
in the world and what's kind of available to you.
Yeah, and I mean the novelty of like figuring out what it is and what it means, that's not only gonna hold so far. I need to like the gameplay has to be tight also,
Sure.
because
Yeah. Because
there's
yeah,
only so much
once you
very
figure out what an instruction, like how to complete an instruction, then once you see it again, then you'll kind of know what you need to do, right?
yeah. And like the shoot throwing the rubber ducks in the container or the dumpster, that's probably something you're gonna do at least twice or three times during the gameplay of the whole game, not on the same map, but
Right. Yeah.
these
It's like
kind
yeah, but it's like
I'm just throwing enough very different mechanics and props and stuff into it, that you feel like, oh, something new interesting to do every time you do it, but it's still just a bunch of permutations. And like most games which has like some sort of a randomized quest system, they're just like permutations of a lot of different stuff that you can do. We had that in the game I worked on before, Battle Right, and the player liked it. So that was like almost like pull down the curtains behind the games, like, oh wait, it's like all of the tasks and quests in all games can be broken down into just like a simple action and a prop.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so I guess
Yeah.
it's kind of comes to the question of like, how do you make it interesting, even though that, maybe someone if they've seen the instruction before, they kind of know what they need to accomplish, but maybe how they go about that might be different if they're, doing it on in a different level or
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and some of it, like, I don't, maybe right now I have maybe like 24 different permutations of all the small instructions or slash puzzles that you make to progress. And I want to maybe go up to 100 permutations. Then it's like, well, if you play the game, eventually you're gonna get one instruction twice, and that's fine. But most of the time you're gonna be surprised, and maybe it's just that it's like anvils you throw on the roof instead of rubber duckies. But hey, it's something new.
But yeah, then
And
yeah,
now
maybe
you
there
get
is
to
some
think.
like some difference about like how the player can like pick up anvils versus how they can pick up ducks, and that kind of like leads to some
Exactly.
maybe there's some
Exactly.
restrictions about like you can't walk up a ladder with an anvil or something like that, right?
Yeah, or you can't throw it as far, so you need to
Yeah, yeah.
maybe cooperate to have it get into the dumpster or
You find
something.
some different item to help you out to accomplish that or something.
Yeah, and maybe vases. Oh, you broke the vase. Too bad. You need to bring another one from where you got it. Like the rubber ducky won't break, so that's a different mechanic.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So
So
that's the kind of thing that I'm working on, and it's hard design work, but it's still fun
yeah,
to try to
yeah,
work it out.
totally. So yeah, I guess where are you kind of at overall in development right now? It sounds like you kind of have a lot of the maybe kind of core gameplay mechanics in place, but there's still kind of some more things that you would like to add on the design side for different instructions, things of that nature. So I guess where are you kind of at in the overall scope of development, and where do you kind of see development kind of going from here?
Yeah. So right now, there's like 3 maps that is like that's properly working, and like fundamentally, as you can like play through the whole map and succeed, and go back to the menu and stuff. And 2 of them are quite polished, and the city map are the most polished, especially graphically. So that's and all of the 8 or 9 maps has like uh, all of them except for one works as a map to play on, but a lot of half of them doesn't have like the actual gameplay properly implemented then yet. So right now I'm just like trying to make, because I'm doing a narrative shift a little bit. Before it was just random instructions and you're locked into this simulation and you're going to do it, and you're like captured inside of it. That was the original idea,
Right.
but it turned to that you are a strike team going in. So I need to make that the tutorial in the beginning needs to like introduce you to the AI scientist outside, and like make like, this is why you're here, this is how we're going to help you, and this is how it's going to transpire. This is a training exercise, like Neo in the Matrix with Morpheus in the beginning, like his trains. So that type of thing that you start off with, and then so that whole thing is still still something that's basically next week work actually. And then this I have a ton of puzzles, but they are structured in a different way. So the next part is getting this going into a map, doing the first already existing instruction as it is, and then like getting this communication from the outside, and like implementing that whole arc of like doing stranger and stranger versions of the same instructions, and then breaking down the map. And the breaking down the map, I've like a few things that you saw in the trailer, some houses on the side, some things swapped out, some prefabs, some object like a little trash can turned into a very miniature phone booth. Like that's one of the things that like, well, that doesn't work properly. The simulation is not feeling well. I guess I should continue doing what I did. That's the type of thing, and I just need to work more on that and like find interesting, funny ways to make the whole game collapse into like surreal, glitchy mess. So, but right now, this month I'm planning on bringing a bunch of beta players in. I have a lot of emails that I'm going to send out, and like get as many
Awesome.
people and friends, and you're going to get, and your audience can sign up and get in as well pretty soon.
Sweet.
Yeah, but that's probably not going to be the absolute finest version of the narrative structure,
Sure. Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
I just need to like, yeah, it's not really exactly as it will be, but go in, shoot stuff, see
Make
if you
sure
can
it technically
survive, have
works,
fun.
and yeah.
Yeah. So that, and then Steam Next Fest in October. That's when I plan to have all the narrative structures in place and do a proper demo. So a
Awesome,
completely public demo.
awesome,
And
awesome.
who knows what happens after that? I have to look at the numbers and see what the best choice is for my game after that.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Exciting
yeah,
times.
yeah. Stressful, but but exciting. It's a very unique feeling to do put so much work into a single product and then like eventually show it off to the world.
Right,
It's
yeah.
like
And yeah, and
it's
again, you're just a solo developer on this, so it's like, you're taking care of everything. Not only are you, solving all these, crazy technical challenges that we've been talking about, but you're also doing, all the design stuff and then still, doing
marketing.
marketing and everything. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's definitely a lot.
my to-do list for everything to send out to people today when I launched the trailer was like 2 pages of just like random stuff all over the internet, which like that's everybody needs to know about the trailer. Hopefully, everybody will, no, somebody will care. Let's go.
Yeah, and keep pushing it out. I think the trailer is awesome, so I really hope
Yeah,
that
thank you.
it'll definitely pick up. So yeah.
Yeah. I think also a demo on if I just make the game good, a demo will probably help a ton. That's my like to make it yeah, to just bring awareness. To have something to play, I think is I'm a little bit annoyed that I haven't been able to do a proper demo yet. So now is really the time. So I think it's gonna help a lot.
Cool. That sounds great
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those are kind of like the most of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about. Was there anything that you kind of like wanted to share, like maybe technically or design or any otherwise that we'd kind of maybe not covered
Yeah,
yet?
I wrote down a few things. We've gone through some of them, but I wrote down some things that I thought was I could just bring out that dots related.
Yeah, for
I know
sure.
we've been talking a while here, but stuff that came from the left side for me that I wasn't really. And not afterwards, I'm like, this is something that new people in dots should know about and should think
Yeah.
about.
I'd love to hear it. Yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, when you're doing a lot of parallel stuff, I don't know if you can attest to this, but it's kind of hard to communicate out of the system in parallel in a good way to like make like decisions in parallel and make it do stuff deterministically afterwards in another system that's completely unrelated. It's like
Mm.
how do you um, the first version I did of this was that I just made entities and I strapped a component to it and I just had my entity command buffer in parallel and just like spit it out and then we do whatever we need to do with it next frame
Right,
or
right, right.
next system or whatever
Yeah.
is consuming the and I call it the signal system because it wasn't really an event system. It was because it could be like every frame I could send stuff, and then it becomes less an event and more of just a signal that stuff is happening
Makes
continuously.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a huge performance issue. Can you guess why?
Mm. Um, just
I
the
don't want to
amount of
put you on the
structural
spot there,
change,
but
the amount of structural changes, maybe.
exactly. So and I mean that's common knowledge for a lot of the dots developers, but you need something to really think about, and it feels almost like a cheat. But the thing I realized is that you just don't do a component with an entity of it. There's no point. You just make a framework where you can put in where you can construct native queues
Mm-hmm.
on the fly with stuff that that you want that holds structs with information you're interested in communicating out, and then you have like just some sort of a framework where you can just pull it in the different type of signals you would like to produce. You have a signal system for each type of data you want to produce, and all of them have their own like queue of native queues.
Mm.
So it's like the command buffer systems, is where you like
Right.
the
So
thing that
you're basically
causes
just
all
like,
the
yeah, from parallel, you're just kind of adding to a native queue, and then maybe later on in the frame, you can kind of just like iterate through all those things in the native
yeah.
queue and kind of handle that as needed.
Yeah, and it's just so strange because a lot of the time in this in these like communication system, you don't need an entity to strap it to because there's no need to identify the event or the signal in question. It's just data flowing out of the system, right? So to create an entity and to strap some component to it, it's just unnecessary to begin with. Like you never check that index of that entity. You're just like, oh, and there's new data coming out. There's like um, a death effect that should play here at this position. I don't care who said it. It's just a death effect here. Let's go. That's kind of like an event or a signal, and that
Sure.
should just be just use straight up native collections and just structs, and just don't use entities unless you need to.
So
Because if
these
it,
native queues, they're not like connected to any entity or anything like that. It's just like a
no,
pure.
it's just randomly in a system. It's just mine are actually in a like a managed list because so when I need to produce more sound, so I have like a one shot sound system which is
Mm-hmm.
parallelizable. So I just like give me a new queue with the play sound uh, version of it, and then it gives me one and it just registers. Oh, we just created another native queue, and unique native queue. Put it into a list, keep track of it, while this other system just takes out the parallel writer version of it and throw it into the system, and it just produces how many one shot effects, one shot sounds it wants. And when the system is done and the next step, like in the presentation group or something like that, another system picks up exactly those cues and just goes through them and like, oh, let's see here
And
what
just handles
sounds we
them.
should
So you
play.
could do that for,
Yeah,
yeah, different UI events, particle effects,
yeah,
and yeah.
everything,
Interesting.
every communication in between systems, that is like communication from one system to another is handled via these native queues instead of
So
doing
then
entities
where
of it.
exactly does that native queue like live? Like how can you kind of like write to that and access that? Is it like kind of like in like a central location or something? Or like how's
Yeah,
that kind of
like with
done?
the sound system, there's actually like a sound system. Um, I think it's just called sound system, like a system base, and it has just like a normal private list native queue with the
Hmm.
right. And when I say
So then you
because
actually, so then say from like another system, you can kind of like access that that queue to, yeah, read it or
yeah,
add to it or
I just
whatever.
ask the system, give me a new queue, and it creates a new queue, put it in the list so you can keep track of it. And here you
Hmm.
have a queue, it's only yours, just like end simulation component
Oh,
buffer
okay. So
system.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's not like, so yeah, they can run in parallel. You can have like multiple systems basically adding their own queues and everything like that.
yeah, exactly. It
Interesting.
works like almost exactly like a command entity buffer that you get from an entity command system,
But
but
you
it's
don't have
just
any
not
structural
entities.
changes.
There's no need, and it's just like
That's really smart.
just almost removed all of the like frame stuttering for me,
That's
because
great.
otherwise
I might have to try that for some things in some projects that I'm working
yeah,
on.
I think I'm almost I can actually like send you the not that you should use it if you don't want to, but just look at it, the
Yeah, no,
signal
no,
code.
I'd be happy to take a look at it. Yeah.
It's not a lot of code. You're gonna look at it, you're
Yeah,
like,
I'm sure.
oh, that's not a lot of things. That's actually much easier to work with that. And so remember that when you have like this huge amount of crawlers, the problem is essentially not the amount of crawlers per se. The problem is that to make a good game, all of the crawlers needs to do a lot of things, like play sound, play effects, play particle effects, do all of these different things. And when you shoot a shotgun discharge into a bunch of crawlers, you get this waterfall of different things that all of the crawlers need to do. So if you have so if you create a structural change for every effect that one crawler need to play, that's
Yeah.
just a big mess. So it's just like a forking out into a huge amount of things that happens because of 100 crawlers dies, then it's like a lot of stuff that happens, and
Makes
that's
sense.
the
Yeah.
big problem with performance.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
simulating the crawlers per se. So the performance of the game is all right now, but if I spawn 4,000 and you shoot something very good and you kill like 200 crawlers in one hit, you probably get a little bit of a spike, and that spike would be like 100 times worse if it were entity-based signals.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
So yeah, don't make entities unless you need to. That's my thing.
No, I like that. I think that'll definitely like kind of change up some of the way that I approach some problems in some other projects that
Yeah,
I
I
work on.
coded for a
So
whole year without that. So
yeah, no, because yeah, no, I think I have been kind of using that more, entity command buffer structural change approach, and I mean it works well, and it's you
yeah,
use the built-in tools and everything like that, but yeah, no, the structural changes definitely can be quite costly.
yeah, and like you could probably make a lot of games with almost no structural changes if you really put some elbow grease into it with these kind of solutions instead. It's interesting, with which would be super performant. Yeah.
Nice. And I see we got John Gregory in the chat. We got more of my
There we
jujitsu
go.
friends here.
Nice. Are they jiu-jitsu friends?
Yeah.
You do jiu-jitsu. That's cool.
I do.
I
Yeah.
did a little bit when I was younger,
Yeah.
but fell out. But it was fun. It was really fun.
Oh, it's the
I sort of
best.
missed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm competing tomorrow, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is it live stream somewhere?
It's not live stream, but I think you can like view like the live results. So I'll send you like the link for it.
Yeah, I want to know. That's good. That's good. Physical activity is good for all game developers.
Oh, I agree 100%. Keeps you
I ran
mentally and physically sharp.
half a marathon in on Sunday.
Oh,
To
congrats.
Yeah, well, I do it. Thank you. But it's a normal thing for me to do a few times a year. So but it was just to prepare for this crazy week of completing the trailer and making everything happen. So I'm
Nice.
like, I need to be
Nice.
sharp. That's fun.
What time did you get if you don't mind me asking?
Actually, it was like I need to answer this in Fahrenheit. 26 degrees.
No. What
Oh,
time? What time on the
yeah, but
marathon? Or
give me a second. Height. I know what you mean. I know what you asked. An hour, 2 hours and 10 minutes,
okay,
but it was
nice.
80 degrees the whole time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was like I had
That's
to
pretty
run
warm.
to the water thing on every lap because my body was just going through so much water. So I think I can do it under 1 hour and 50 minutes if I really try and if it's good
Yeah, that's
weather
pretty
for
solid.
it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm a runner. That's my thing to exercise.
Nice, nice. You done
Yeah.
any full marathons?
No, not full actually. Kind of bothers me actually, but I've heard that day is like exponentially much harder than a half a marathon.
You should
It's
do it.
like,
I've done one full marathon.
oh, cool.
Yeah,
How
I
did it
did the San
go?
Francisco one. It was awesome. It was a great time. The worst part about the marathon was training for the marathon because it was like this was like back when I was still kind of like working my day job at an IT company, and so it was like, I'd like work there for 8 hours, and then I'd have to like literally just for training run a half marathon, which takes like 2 hours plus the time it takes to like
Yeah.
get ready, warm up, stretch afterwards and everything. So it was just so much time, but yeah.
What time did you get on the actual marathon?
It was 3 hours 37 minutes.
That's really good.
Yeah,
Holy shit.
yeah.
Oh my,
I was I
I'm
was I was stoked
I'm
with
blown
that.
away by that. I'm confident I can come close to that.
I
I
think you'd
need
do
to
fine.
run a lot more. But like I think I ran like maybe 10 or 15 half marathon in my life.
Nice.
The past years, past 4 years, I've done a lot of them. And when I'm done, I'm like, holy damn, my body does not want to run anymore, and I can't imagine running another. equally much again.
Yeah, no,
That
it was
sounds
a lot.
insane to me.
And yeah, here's actually a question that is kind of related to some of the structural changes. So yeah, would be nice if all entities could be pre-allocated in the start to prevent structural changes. Well, you can
Yeah.
kind of do that with like entity archetypes, I guess, but you're still like, I guess, yeah, kind of
Well, I
creating.
mean, you can just declare a whole bunch of your entities and then just put a disabled on them.
Yeah,
So
true. To like almost do
it's
kind of
just
like a
like,
pooling type solution or
yeah, it's
something.
pulling. And like the only reason not to do that, I guess, is complexity, I guess, but also memory, and like the things, and I mean that's two-sided sword of this. The systems that you would actually need to pool in that way, those are the system where you probably would need like 10,000 entities lying around. Unless it's like a huge amount of entities that you need to create at the same time, the instantiation won't really be a problem, right? You need to have like, oh, I need to create 10,000 of these at the same time. Then the creation of entities might be a problem. But then you will have a problem of like, oh, just having 10,000 extra entities lying around with all the components will take some memory. So the memory side of things and cache side of things, I think could be a problem if you were to just pre-cache everything. You would just like, yeah, the cache optimization of entities is so good, and if you just pull in like a bunch of entities that you don't use into the mix, then it feels like, yeah, then you miss a little bit of the pros of the system.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's just actually just speculation from my part. Don't listen to it too
Yeah,
much.
yeah, yeah. No, makes sense. So yeah, did you have any other tips or things that you kind of wanted to, share with people who might be starting out with Unity ECS, or maybe some, even if they have been kind of like maybe in ECS for a while and kind of doing things one way, and has there been any kind of like major, yeah, things that have been helpful for you?
um, the the material property I component. Have you made a video about this?
I think a while ago you're talking about like the like material property overrides, basically.
Uh, Yeah, I think they just called material property right now, isn't it?
Well,
Anyway,
are you talking about like you can like kind of override the like say like like the base color of a material, so you don't have to like completely change the material out, you mean?
yeah. The way that Unity and the dots is like particularly easily optimized around pushing data to the GPU
Right.
from
Yeah. Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Yeah. It's
essentially
because
what
it can all
happens,
be
right?
like, yeah, GPU instance, and it doesn't have to like create like a separate material. You
Yeah.
don't have the separate draw calls and all that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like when the thing about using base color to override without doing another having another material, that's obviously a very good use case to do it,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
should do that instead of. But honestly, the big part about that is custom ones. Like you can just go into Shady Graph, say this is my new float, name it my float value, and then in the material property um, attribute declaration, you just put the same name in.
Right.
And
Right. Right.
as
Right.
long as
Right.
you're rendering a material that uses the same shader, it just works. And it's just like people underestimate how easy it is to make huge, complex um, GPU animation, both in like vertex animation and in texture animation, because you can generate procedurally generated textures in with noise and stuff inside of the shader graph, and just push in stuff from the actual gameplay through these components, right? And just do lots. So when you hurt enemies in just read instructions, they start glowing, and that's just like a ramp from 0 to 1 of a float value that just gets pumped over to the shader graph, and then the GPU solves all of that. And it's just so easy, and everything is super optimized and instanced, as you said.
Yeah. 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 No, that's
So
definitely a
yeah,
helpful one. Yeah, I do have a video on that from a while ago, but it was from like, a previous version, so might
yeah,
want to do an
yeah.
update on that one.
I think it's an well, not necessarily underrated feature. A lot of people who use that knows exactly how awesome it is.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, totally. Yeah.
it took a while for me before I realized like all of the stuff, everything that it gets that is complex to send over to have it show in a unique way on the screen in a shader, everything just pack it into a, you can send over a whole matrix 4x4.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
the legs of every crawler, all of the four legs are sent by one matrix.
Oh,
Their
interesting.
world position are just like thrown into a matrix and sent over, and then they know where the leg is.
So then, yeah, it sounds like all the glowing enemies, they're all batched together then, right?
Yeah. Completely instanced everything. It wouldn't
That's awesome.
even remotely work if it wasn't like that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe I don't know. It's maybe not that heavy, but it's certainly a lot easier to do it batched and but with the hybrid and
Entities
entities
graphics,
graphics,
yeah.
it's by default a lot of times instanced and rendered in the most optimal
Right,
way.
right, right, right.
Yeah. So it's I shouldn't take credit for it. I should just like, yeah, use the right version of it. Yeah.
Cool. Any other tips
Uh,
or topics you wanted to bring up?
no, I mean, there's so many stuff that I could go through, but we've been going on for more than 2 hours now, so I think maybe I should rest, let people rest some. Yeah, I just love talking about this stuff, so there's always stuff that, but I think we brought up all of the cool new fancy stuff that I made for the game so far.
Cool. Well, yeah, it's definitely exciting stuff. I'm absolutely looking forward to it. Make sure you go ahead and check out the description below. I got a bunch of links in there from I think when the last live stream that we did, which again was 2 years ago exactly tomorrow, which is just
That's
funny timing
crazy.
on things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
and
Is there any?
then as well, I have the link to the Just Read the Instructions Steam page, so you can go ahead and wish list that there. Looks like we do have one more question that came in here real quick. I think we can get to. If the
Yeah.
enemies were moving continuously, do you think it would be so easily networked? Do you think that would change much
If
on
the
kind of your networking solution?
enemies were moving continuously, do you think? Oh, so like if, well, I think he means like if they had like a complex, precise movement pattern that was essential to their gameplay and that needed to be networked, right? I have some character who runs in an actual line. Crawlers are just cannon fodder, so it doesn't matter how they move really. So yeah, yes. But I think that the solution to those kind of problems with networking is you need to like realize, like if you can like maybe pull in like just the character starts here and ends here, and just like you only synchronize 2 points and then you interpolate between them, and you don't let's sync the whole continuous position thing. So if on with NPCs, which where you can let your local client simulate a lot of stuff and just like fill in a lot of stuff that the network
Sure. Yeah.
doesn't. But often you can like break your character movement and mechanics down to just like a few key points, sync those key points, and then simulate the rest. So the jumper who jumps around, he has a continuous movement that's very precise, but he only synchronizes the where he is right now and where he's going and what time he's leaving. That's it. And both the client and the server has all the curves and all the timings and all the durations that they need. And then like, okay, he's starting this. I know where he's gonna be at this frame, so let's put him here then. So you did just two positions and a time, and then you have this smooth flying object with custom acceleration and everything, because that's a curve that everybody knows about. So you don't need to sync that acceleration in any way.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So certainly you can make a lot of enemies move very smoothly and very precise over network. You just need to break it down to easier key points of the movement.
Cool, makes sense to me. Yeah. So much interesting things that you can do with networking, like figuring out ways that you can, optimize, like what data do you actually need to send, and what things can the clients just kind of like, you know, basically
Yeah,
interpret on its own kind of thing.
and like when you like shoot something, you have this, you push the mouse button, something shoots, something travels, something dies. Like there's several different points, key points in that action that you can sync, and several of them you can skip and just let it happen simulated, and then
Sure.
like hopefully you'll end up on the same point. So the hard part about programming in network games sometimes is like identifying like which part of that whole sequence you can just like, well, let's just not sync that at all. That's just a waste of bits over the network. Let's just have the clients do all of this, and then at the end we like, okay, server, I make sure that everybody's on the same page in the end, and then it's good. And if it looks a little bit wonky for people, it's okay. They think they're playing the same game, they're having fun. It doesn't really matter. So yeah,
Fair
it's
enough.
it's 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 a very interesting, big, complex subject.
Yeah, yeah, no
Yeah.
kidding. Which is what, yeah. But yeah, sounds like it's been working out pretty well for you so far, and yeah, it's exciting stuff. Definitely, again, looks like an awesome game. So yeah, I guess we can probably wrap it up there. So yeah, thank you, Tobias, for joining me here today. This was a ton of fun. I think we covered a lot of interesting topics, and there's a lot of good things that I think people can take away from this. So yeah, thank you for everyone stopping by and hanging out in the chat, asking some good questions. I think it was a great stream overall.
Thank you so much for having me. It's awesome as usual.
Absolutely. And yeah, I guess we'll just go out. We can go ahead and just play the trailer for you guys one last time here with sound this time. Enjoy. Awesome. Love it.
Yeah, I'm proud.
All
It
right.
was nice.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you later.